Greetings everyone, and thank you for joining me for part 2 of the AMK Tomcat build. This video is a bit on the long side, but there is a lot to cover, and I apologize in advance for my voice. I've been feeling a bit under the weather of late, but please enjoy. Cockpit construction starts off with the seats. I've got the tools I need, my flush cutters, hobby knife, and Tamiya thin cement. After removing the part from the sprue, I clean them up with my hobby knife. The parts are then glued together with the cement. The rest of the build will continue in this fashion. I was a little disappointed that the seat halves didn't have a good positive join, and left a large gap in the seat headrest. However, in spite of the fit, the parts were very well detailed and the build order was logical. Half of the parts going onto this seat are very small, but they add great detail and layers to the seat. With the main seat construction done, I wanted to try and clean up the gaps in the headrest. Rather than filling with putty and sanding, I opted to fill over the gaps with styrene. This process was pretty quick for both seats. Next, it was time to tackle the photo etch harnesses. The instructions are missing any directions on how these are installed. Additionally, looking at images of the real seats, the photo etch doesn't really match. I concluded that I would be able to use a combination of the photo etch and some lead foil to make it work. Using my hobby knife, I rolled the lead foil flat. The foil will be secured to the seat using thick CA glue I purchased from my local hobby shop. I apply the glue to the seat using a small bit of extra floral wire. After applying the foil, I use the blade of my hobby knife to secure it down. I lost the footage where I continued applying the rest of the shoulder harnesses, but here you can see where I used the photo etch parts. And now to apply the lap belts. This was just a matter of gluing the belts into the right spot. Then once the glue was cured, bending the belt down onto the seat. With the seats done, the next step was the cockpit tub. All of the side console parts fit in without issue. Test fitting as you build is not only a helpful tool, but it can also help you see how cool your build is going. Moving on to the instrument panels, these have excellent detail and require very little cleanup. There are some small components that need to be applied to each of the instrument panel hoods. This small piece of photo etch holds the heads-up display glass. All of the major construction is done, and it's time to move on to paint. Generally, I prime everything I paint, and for interior components like these, I use Vallejo's Surface Primer in black. I'm using my Iwata Eclipse airbrush and spraying at about 20 psi. I've thinned the primer with tap water at about 5 parts paint, 1 part water. Once the primer has dried, I move on to color. The base for the cockpit is Dark Compass Ghost Gray by MiG by Ammo. I'm thinning this with 90% isopropyl alcohol and spraying it about 15 psi. Off camera, I had done some experimenting with painting all of the instrument panels, but I wasn't happy with the results that I was getting. So I resprayed my base coat and then sprayed a gloss coat to prepare for decals. When doing the decals for the instrument panels, there are many areas on each instrument panel that are different heights, so I cut out each of those sections separately. To apply each decal, I first wet the area where they will be applied. Then slide the decal off the paper and onto the model using a wet brush. Next, ensure the decal is in the correct position. Using a cotton bud, gently press the decal down. This also removes excess moisture. The final step is to apply any decal setting solution you may prefer. Personally, I like Walther's Solvaset. Solvaset can be a bit aggressive with certain decals, so exercise caution when applying to decal brands you haven't used before. In general, I found the decals were easy to work with and reacted well to the solva set. They were thin, in good register, and had very little carrier film. I painted the instrument panel hoods off-screen using Vallejo's khaki and a wash of Citadel's skeleton horde. The sidewall detail was also picked out with Vallejo's black and given a wash. The seats were also painted off-camera using various Vallejo colors for the details. There were still a few details to paint in the cockpit. The control sticks were first painted black. Since I would be building my Tomcat in a powered down state, I decided to paint over the multifunction displays to take away the green glow. I also needed to paint the stripes on the ejection handles. I find the best way to do this is to make sure your paint is thinner than you would normally use. A few more cockpit details picked out in khaki. I used Vallejo's white to pick out a few of the buttons. Finally, I add a little bit of Vallejo red on top of some of the white buttons that I'd previously painted. And that wraps up the build of the cockpit. I will give everything a matte coat, then hit the multifunction displays and gauges with some gloss. Please enjoy these photos of the finished product. I hope you enjoyed the build so far. Please stay tuned for the next part where we will cover the wheel wells and construction of the fuselage. Please consider subscribing to my channel, and I would love to hear from you down in the comments below. Also, please check out my Instagram, link is down in the comments. See you next time!